Chapter 202 Risk and Reward. Nephi and Kai dove away, and the massive pillar of bone shot past them. Before the thunderous sound of it crashing against the wall of the chamber even reached Sonny's ears, the pillar was already moving, whipping sideways with tremendous force. Luckily, he and Cassie were behind it, but Effie and Castor were not. Both of them reacted with admirable speed and fell to the ground, allowing the terrifying limb of the gargantuan creature to fly above their heads. Rising from the stone floor, the huntress screamed, "It's just thrashing in its sleep! Move! We need to get out of here before the bastard wakes up!" Cursing, Sonny dismissed the midnight shard and faced the mountain of bones, trying to predict its next move. He was beginning to understand how Effie's original hunting party had perished in the catacombs. A sword wouldn't be of any use in this situation. The Lord of the Dead was slowly coming to its senses. The bones constituting its repulsive body moved and rippled, unfurling from within the white mass like giant, twisting limbs. It seemed to be slowly turning from a shapeless hill into some semblance of a creature. What shape that creature would assume once it fully awoke, Sonny didn't want to know. Another twisting pillar, limb, suddenly shot from the mass of bones, blindly striking at the empty space behind the giant abomination. Sonny gritted his teeth, his ears ringing from the thunderclap of its impact against the wall. What followed was a deafening noise of thousands of ancient bones scraping against weathered stone. The massive pillar whipped left and right, then fell to the ground and slowly retreated back inside the body of the Lord of the Dead. Meanwhile, Nephi was back at her feet. Dashing toward Kai, she pushed one end of the golden rope into his hands and pointed to the breach in the dome of the chamber. In the next moment, the archer soared into the air, flying to his destination with incredible speed. With a terrifying scraping sound, the whole white mountain rippled once again, and several devastating pillars of bone shot to intercept him. However, Sonny had no time to check on Kai, because the Lord of the Dead had extended two more limbs in his direction. Diving under the first one, Sonny felt a wave of fetid air rush past him. Knowing that he only had a second left to live, he then strained his muscles and jumped with all his shadow-augmented might. Sonny's body flew several meters into the air, avoiding the rushing bone tentacle only by a few centimeters. Landing in a roll, Sonny cursed and got back to his feet. What kind of an infernal jumping rope game is this? The Lord of the Dead was slowly coming to its sense. More bone tentacles appeared from the mass of corpses, each moving with growing precision. But Kai was already standing on the palm of the giant stone hand, the golden rope looped around one of its fingers. Cassie was the first one to climb up. With the flying rapier loyally hovering over her shoulder, the blind girl effortlessly moved up the rope, reaching the distant ceiling of the underground chamber less than 10 seconds later. It was easy to forget that she had absorbed as much soul essence as the rest of them. Her delicate arms hid much more power than one would assume. However, back on the ground, those seconds were a real hell. The mountainous creature was waking up, making it hard for the rest of them to stay away from its blindly thrashing limbs. They needed to get out of here fast. Effie was the next one to take the rope. The huntress practically flew up, pushing herself with agility and Herculean strength worthy of an ancient hero. Then, it was Castor's turn. Effortlessly dodging a pillar of bone with his incredible speed, the legacy grabbed the rope, and turned into a barely visible blur. A second later, he was already landing on the giant stone palm. Nephi and Sonny were the only ones left in the reach of the fallen tyrant. Glancing at Sonny, Changing Star yelled, "Your turn!" However, Sonny did not respond. His eyes were fixed on the base of the gargantuan abomination, where, amidst the ancient bones, a weak golden glow emanated from a small, partially concealed object. Sonny lingered for a moment, his thoughts moving with incredible speed. He knew that he was a greedy person by nature, and one cursed with insatiable curiosity, too. However, first and foremost, he was someone who put a tremendous amount of value on his own survival. That's why, right now, his reasoning was cold as sober. It was a question of risk and reward, as well as his ability. Would he be able to reach the object shining with the light of divinity and come back alive, or not? A second later, he looked at Nephi and answered, "You go. I'll be just behind you." It would be a shame to go through all of this and not receive anything in return. He had to try. With that, Sonny turned around and dashed toward the Lord of the Dead. The decision was made, and now all that was left was to execute it. Summoning the prowling thorn, he threw it at the mountain of bones. Of course, Sonny didn't hope to wound the tyrant. He just wanted to lodge the kunai in its body. Just as the throwing dagger pierced the mass of bones, a white limb suddenly shot in his direction, obstructing everything with its repulsive expanse. Commanding the invisible string to contract, Sonny jumped high into the air and flew forward as though launched from a cannon. Landing on the other side of the pillar, just a few steps away from the unencompassable mass of bones, he gritted his teeth. And then thrust his hand inside the fallen tyrant's body. A moment later, his fist closed around the concealed object, and with some effort, Sonny pulled it out in the clatter of breaking bones. A sharp pain pierced his forearm. Opening his fist, he saw a small, intricate iron key. It looked almost ordinary, if not for the ethereal golden glow emanating from within it. In the next moment, Sonny suddenly staggered, feeling a wave of weakness washed over his body. Rotating his forearm, he stared blankly at it for a split second, trying to comprehend what he was seeing. And when he did, his eyes widened in terror. Chapter 203 Corpse Eater. Glistening in the dim twilight of the underground chamber, an enormous leech was attached to his forearm. The creature was about a meter long, its slimy skin slightly translucent and red as dried blood. It was indescribably repulsive. What's worse, though, was that its sucker had effortlessly broken through the leather vambrace of the puppeteer's shroud and sunk deep into Sonny's arm, splitting open his skin and muscles. Currently, the leech was gorging on his blood, its belly slowly ballooning as crimson fluid rushed into it with frightening speed. With a sense of disgust and horror, Sonny slammed his fist into the spongy flesh of the revolting monster. Augmented with the power of shadows, his punch was powerful enough to easily break a human skull. The abhorrent slug, however, did not even react to it. It just continued sucking out his blood. All Sonny achieved was sending a wave of pain rolling through his body. Not good. Instantly summoning the Midnight Shard, he enhanced its edge with the help of the shadow and hacked at the leech, putting all his strength behind the strike. The blade of the Tachi was as sharp as a razor, and with the augmentation provided by shadow, it slid helplessly off the leech's skin, not leaving even a scratch on it. The slug wasn't affected at all. It was still drinking his blood, consuming a dangerous amount of it with each second. Sonny stared at the disgusting creature, dumbfounded. His body was already starting to suffer from blood loss, a sickening weakness slowly spreading through it. There wasn't much time left until it would cause him to lose consciousness. And then, inevitably, die. Think. The leech had broken through his Tier 5 awakened armor without any effort. It was immune to the damage done by the Midnight Shard, which had never failed to cut down any monster he faced before. This could only mean one thing. The damn slug was a fallen beast. Sonny blinked in disbelief. That thing is a fallen one? Are you kidding me? If this was true, then nothing he could do would harm the leech. Maybe if he was at the very peak of his rank, there would be a chance. But with his core mostly empty and his aspect ability focused on versatility as opposed to pure might, like Effie's, there was none. The gap between their ranks was just too wide. Stone Saint could probably wound it. But it would take several seconds for the taciturn monster to appear and take action. Seconds that Sonny didn't have. By the time she was able to do anything, he would already be dead, either sucked dry by the abominable slug or crushed to death by the Lord of the Dead. That left Sonny with only one option. If he couldn't get rid of the leech, he was going to have to cut off his arm. Maybe Nephi's would be able to grow him a new one. Or not. In any case, he had to do it in order to survive. Raising the tachi over his head, Sonny gritted his teeth and hesitated for a moment. Despite understanding that this was the only way, he was still struggling with the idea of crippling himself so terribly. Don't think. If you want to live, just do it. With a desperate resolve, he forcefully brought the midnight shard down, but then stopped it at the last second. The sharp blade hovered mere centimeters away from his skin. This was not due to the lack of determination, but because Sonny noticed a subtle change happening to the leech. Its belly, which had been expanding rapidly as his blood filled it, stopped ballooning at some point. Now strange spasms were running through it. What the? In the next moment, the vile creature suddenly convulsed. Letting go of his arm, it dropped to the ground and writhed in agony. Through the translucent film of its skin, Sonny could see the innards of the giant slug bursting open. It was as though it was being torn from within by some invisible force. No, not a force. It was being killed by his blood. The damn leech got poisoned by it. It seemed that blood weave was far more odd and tenacious of an attribute than he had thought. A second later, the whole body of the fallen beast simply ruptured, spilling blood everywhere. Sonny stared at it with a blank expression. Bringing him out of the daze, the voice of the spell whispered, "You have slain a fallen beast, corpse eater. Your shadow grows stronger. Huh! You have received a memory." As his eyes grew wide, Sonny shook off his astonishment and lunged forward. He still had to escape from this damn place. Grabbing the bloodied soul shard from the eviscerated remains of the abominable leech, he turned around and sprinted to the golden rope. Dodging a bone tentacle that burst from the body of the gargantuan tyrant to pursue him, Sonny rolled on the ground, jumped over a pile of broken bones, and finally reached his destination. As soon as he grabbed the rope, it began contracting, bringing him out of the underground chamber. When Sonny was nearly reaching the hand of the stone goddess, a deafening roar thundered from below, washing over his body in an almost palpable wave. The Lord of the Dead was finally awake. But it was already too late. His prey had escaped. Climbing out of the mud, Sonny fell to his knees, and then tiredly lowered himself to the ground. The breath was escaping from his lungs with laborious, raspy sounds. Weak. He felt so weak. And tired. But it was so good to see the sun again. The wounds he had received in the catacombs had finally caught up with Sonny. With adrenaline gone, he was now in a sea of pain. A quiet groan escaped from his lips. That was not fun. While Sonny was contemplating this, a shadow fell over him. Looking up, he saw Nephi glaring at him with a dark expression. She was bloodied and battered, with a deep frown contorting the graceful lines of her usually calm face. "What?" Kneeling beside Sonny, Changing Star grimaced and said, "Are you insane? Why did you do that?" He tried to chuckle, but ended up twisting in an excruciating coughing fit. When Sonny was finally able to breathe again, he said weakly, "Yes, no? Maybe. I don't know. I just saw something shiny." With that, he opened his fist and showed Changing Star the glowing crystal of the ascended soul shard he had scavenged from the corpse of the vile blood-sucking leech. She stared at it for a few moments, and then sighed. Without saying anything else, Nephi placed her cool hands on his chest and closed her eyes. A moment later, the purifying white flame spread through his body like a warm embrace, repairing any damage done to it. Even knowing how much pain this cost her, Sonny couldn't help but be happy to feel its touch again. Soon, his pain disappeared. With his head cleared of the fog, he realized that they had done it. They had successfully escaped the Dark City. Who knew it would be so hard? Chapter 204 Mysterious Key. A while later, they were resting in the shadow of the giant statue. Every member of the cohort looked nothing short of terrible, however. Beneath the bloodied loaths and broken armor, their bodies were whole and sound. Changing Star had healed them all, and now, she was the only one who was weak and exhausted. Using the white flame so much had taken a heavy toll on her. Sitting in the mud, Sunny raised his head and looked at the giant statue of the faceless woman. She was just like the last time he had seen her, slender and graceful, with her light flowing robe rippling in the wind, as though made out of actual fabric and not hard stone. The statue was tilted slightly to the side, with its one remaining hand reaching high into the sky. A long time ago, on the night of their harrowing escape from the Ashen Barrow, Sunny, Cassie and Nephi's had taken shelter in her palm. It was from its height that he had first seen the walls of the Dark City. Looking down, Sunny stared at the other hand of the giant statue, which had broken off a long time ago and fell down, crushing through the dome of the underground chamber. With a sigh, he closed his eyes and thought, "Thank you for saving us again." Then, his face darkened. Remembering the events that had transpired in the catacombs, Sunny felt his good mood evaporating. Although he had found the answer to one of the mysteries that had been plaguing him for a while now, he wasn't happy about it. The fate of the inhabitants of the ancient city had always been something that Sunny was very curious about. As an amateur explorer who spent most of his free time studying the ruins of the Dark City, he was familiar with subtle details of their culture more than most. Learning about the mundane facts of their lives was somewhat of a passion of his. He had known that the history of this ancient civilization ended in tragedy, of course. A cataclysmic disaster had destroyed it, turning the once prosperous land into the desolate hell it was today. But against all logic, Sunny still hoped that these people had somehow managed to survive. Perhaps they had migrated somewhere, leaving the ruins of their city behind. But now he knew that it wasn't so. All of them were right there below him, buried forever in a damp underground chamber, piled onto each other high enough to form a ghastly mountain of bones. More than that, their remains had been soaked in the cursed waters of the Dark Sea and turned into a vessel for the soul of a vile nightmare creature. There were a lot of questions about the fate of these people still lingering in his mind. How did they end up in that dark chamber? Had they died there, or had their bodies been brought there by someone, or something, later? How was the Lord of the Dead born? Was its inception the same as that of the Soul Devourer? But he didn't really want to know the answers anymore. He felt that learning them would only break his heart. With a sigh, Sunny decided to distract himself from these depressing thoughts with something uplifting and summoned the runes. One cluster, in particular, interested him the most. Shadow Fragments, 322/1000. He had received 4 fragments for killing the corpse eater, even though the manner of its death was rather peculiar. Having now killed nightmare creatures of the awakened, fallen, and great ranks, Sunny could surmise that his initial theory was right. The spell gave him double the fragments for killing enemies of higher ranks, according to the number of soul cores they possessed. An awakened creature would land him 2 fragments for each core, a fallen one 4, and a great one 16. It was easy to guess that killing a dormant creature, which was equal to him in terms of rank, would result in 1 fragment per core, while killing a corrupted one would result in 8. Made sense. It was the same as absorbing soul shards, with the difference being that shadow fragments entered his core at the moment of the kill and without making a distinction between nightmare creatures and humans. Looking up, he glanced at the list of his memories. Memories: Silver Bell, Puppeteer's Shroud, Midnight Shard, Ordinary Rock, Prowling Thorn, Endless Spring, Blood Arrow. The last one was new. Slightly intrigued, Sunny read its description. Memory: Blood Arrow. Memory rank ascended. Memory tier: I. Memory type: Weapon. Memory description: a debt of blood must be paid in blood. Memory enchantments: Rain of Blood, Restitution. Enchantment description: the arrows are created from the wielder's blood, and as such, can rain on the enemies for as long as the archer has any left in their veins. Enchantment description: if the arrow finds its mark, it will drink the blood of the prey and restore that which had been taken from the archer. If it misses, the archer's blood will be lost forever. Huh. Creepy. Since Sonny didn't know how to use a bow, this memory was useless to him. Which was a real shame, because it was the first ascended one he had ever received. Memories of that rank were extremely rare on the Forgotten Shore. He could either feed it to the stone saint for a couple of shadow fragments, or… Sonny glanced at Kai and frowned, lost in thought. While the blood arrow was of no use to him, it would be a real boon for the charming archer. With it at his disposal, he wouldn't have to carry a quiver with him, not to mention that each shot he made would be much more devastating. As long as Kai didn't miss, of course. If he did miss, he would be sacrificing his blood for nothing. Transferring the blood arrow to Kai would have made the cohort much stronger. But Sonny wasn't sure that he was ready to give up his first and only ascended memory. Not for free, at least. Torn, he dismissed the runes and decided to think about it later. In other news, the blood weave had revealed a new trait. Turns out, Sonny's blood was poisonous, or rather, damaging to anyone who ingested it. At least it seemed that way from the manner of Corpse Eater's death. He would have to experiment to find out more later. Or not. Honestly, Sonny didn't even know how one would go about checking something like that, and wasn't particularly eager to find out. After dismissing the runes, Sonny finally decided to take a look at the mysterious key. Subtly glancing around, he furtively took it out from beneath the vambrace of the puppeteer's shroud, where he had hidden it earlier. The intricate iron key lay on his palm, glowing with a pale golden light. The light of divinity. Sonny had no idea what the key was supposed to open. He had taken an insane risk and almost died to get it. Was it worth it? Honestly, he wasn't sure. But deep down, Sonny felt that it was. For some reason, he sensed that the small iron key would turn out to be extremely important to him.